Mr. Speaker, the border war continues and there is no end in sight. And this week, President Calderon of Mexico is coming back to Washington, D.C. He's going to meet with our president. It'll be interesting to see if he continues to blame America for his problems. You remember the last time he was here, he stood here in the House floor and dressed us down as the United States members of the House of Representatives, blaming us for his problems, blaming us for the corruption, blaming us for the drugs that are in Mexico, blaming us for the violence in Mexico, blaming the folks in Arizona for trying to protect their own border. I wonder if he will continue the blame game. The problem is the situation is worse not only on the border, but in Mexico. Corruption along the border with Mexican law enforcement continues, even though that the Mexican military is doing a fairly good job of reining in the drug cartels. And he blames the United States for the guns that are in Mexico. You must remember, Mr. Speaker, just some of the guns that go to Mexico are from the United States. Guns from all over the world end up in Mexico. There are a lot of reasons for that. One of those is Mexico doesn't protect its borders any better than we do. People throughout the world know if you can get to Mexico by any means, whether you want to bring contraband, drugs, guns, or people, you can eventually get into the United States, because Mexico, like the United States, doesn't have operational control of the mutual border between the United States. Even the General Counting Office, those are the people who keep up with statistics, and they have made this report recently that on the United States border with Mexico, only 44% of the border is under the control of the United States, and only 15% is airtight. So who controls the other 56% of the U.S. border with Mexico? If it's not the United States, it's not Mexico. Who controls it? We don't know. Probably the outlaws, the drug cartels. They are the ones that have operational control of both sides of the border, because the situation on the border continues to get worse. Mexico doesn't protect its border from people going into Mexico from any direction, and the United States doesn't protect its border adequately to keep drugs and violence from coming into the United States. Unfortunately, this is continuing to get worse. Last year, 65 Americans were killed in Mexico, and to my knowledge, none of those cases were solved. You see, Mexico has a terrible record of solving crimes not only against Americans, but against Mexican nationals. Over 3,000 people were killed in Juarez last year. That's more people than were killed in Afghanistan last year. Serious, violent situation. And will it continue to come across the border? Some say, oh, it won't come to America. Let me give you one statistic. The 16 border counties in Texas that border Mexico, on any given day, they have about 35% to 40% of the people in their jails are foreign nationals charged with crimes in the United States. These are not immigration violations. These are crimes, some of them violent crimes, 35% to 40%. So the crime is already pouring over, because you see people can go back and forth across the U.S.-Mexican border at will, because there are parts of the border that no one controls. In fact, the situation is so bad this year that the Texas Department of Public Safety today telling young people about spring break, and here's what they say: various crime problems exist in many popular resort areas of Mexico, such as Acapulco and Cancun, and crimes against U.S. citizens often go unpunished. The safety message is simple: avoid traveling to Mexico during spring break and stay alive. So we're even being warned not to let your kids go to Mexico spring break because it is not safe. So what do we do about this? Well, there was a raid recently this week because of an ICE agent that was killed in Mexico. Raids were made in the United States, and 676 drug cartel members were arrested. $12 million was seized, lots of drugs, lots of guns. And it's a point that we need to understand as citizens, that the drug cartels operate in Mexico, but they operate in the United States as well. They bring those drugs to other gang members throughout the cities of America, and they sell those wares here in the United States. So the crime does occur in both sides of the border, and we need to understand that. It is important that we deal in reality and understand that the border is a war zone. A Texas Ranger once told me, he said, Congressman Poe, after dark on the Texas-Mexican border, it gets western. Those days need to end. We need to put the National Guard on the border and secure the border. It will protect the United States and Mexico. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.